good evening. So before we get to know our artists a little bit better, how about another round of applause for our choirs and orchestras? So since this is Meet the Artist, we thought we would take a few moments while we have our big set change to get the band on stage to actually meet our artists a little bit more. And as you've heard, the Native Jazz Quartet, they come from all over. We've got guys from Alaska, Washington, New Orleans, and New York, right? So I guess the first question that I'd like to ask is, how did the four of you guys meet and get together?
Okay, well, I'm fortunate to be a member of the Lionel Hampton Big Band since '96. Lionel Hampton passed in 2001, and I met Jason Marsalis when we were doing a celebration for Lionel Hampton in New Orleans in 2004. After he passed, he was playing in the place of Lionel Hampton with the Lionel Hampton Big Band. And then there's also the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival in Moscow, Idaho, and where Ed actually went to college. And I met also Ed Littlefield at the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival. Actually saw Ed perform as a student. I just saw him today. I remember a guy running around on stage, playing at least 5 different instruments. And we didn't start working together until 2007 at the Sitka Fine Arts Camp. And like I said earlier, and Ed mentioned earlier as well, we did a CD, 2 CDs, which are actually available tonight. All of them. Just by the way. I don't know how I come up with this. Anyway, so we were doing the CD. Ed, as you heard, had the project of fusing his native melodies he grew up with, and I was looking on doing a new CD, and we came up with the idea to record, which was a magical idea. We recorded 2 CDs in 2 days, including a live performance. That will never happen again. So, yeah, and then the great thing about this band is that it naturally evolved, and then Ed called me to do a tour in Alaska, and we just figured, you know, we combine our efforts and make this a band, and on top of that we have incredible fun together, and it's just great musicianship.
There's one thing that I did want to add to what Christian was saying, is that after I did your performance with the Lionel Hampton Orchestra, which freaked me out a little bit, to be honest with you, because those are very, 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 very large shoes to fill. It was, after that he told me that if ever you needed a performance, he would call me, and he did. We did a little show in Canada, and then he called me to do a recording session in Seattle. And I said, yeah, I can make that. I said, yeah, I'm making my record, I want you to be on the jazz fund. So then, I guess sometime after that, he calls me and says, yeah, the drummer on the date, that Littlefield, he's doing his own record, he's doing his own music, and he'd like for you to play on it too. Okay, fine. You know, and I had to, so the day of the session, I flew in from somewhere else. It wasn't New Orleans, I don't even remember where it was. Okay. Oh, okay, it was San Francisco, okay. So I didn't have to far to go. But I come in, and you know, Christian picked me up, and I went and grabbed an apple, and bam, we were in the recording studio. We just started recording, and I was just trying to make it through the music and so forth and playing it. And honestly, I didn't really get what was really going on. I mean, I was playing the parts and playing the tunes and everything and doing the best that I could, but it wasn't until the albums came out about a year later, and we did a tour of Alaska where we were doing a radio interview, and Littlefield talks about the folk music from his native Alaskan tribe, the Ringet tribe. And it was when he said that, I said, oh, that's what that music is. Okay, I didn't know that. And after that, in the same interview, said, well, the fact of the matter is that blues is jazz, is folk music, original folk music. But the music is an open architecture to bring in other genres of music and other folk music from other regions as well. And so after that, we did our next record, which was just folk tunes, you know, done in a jazz context.
You know, for our freshman students who are still in their formative stages of becoming, you know, really great musicians and whatnot, when we watch performers like you, we always think, gosh, you know, they must have just started playing their instruments right away. And,
No.
well, that's good. So we were wondering if maybe you could tell us, you know, what were your experiences like? When did you start? You know, did any of you have a typical 5th grade start like our students do, or how did you get started?
Actually, for me, now that I think about it, it's really a combination of both. I did start on violin at age 5, and drums at age 6. And I would play jazz on drums, classical music on violin, well, reading classical music. And when I was 12, I was in a youth orchestra that had a percussion section, and I had never seen that. And I'd never been a part of an orchestra in classical music that had a percussion section. So the following year, the violin just came to an end, and I started pursuing percussion. Now, yeah, I was studying percussion and timpani, and even some marimba, but honestly, and I had a set of vibes too, but I was honestly practicing very off and on. And so, honestly, when it comes to the vibes, I actually really had a late start. In terms of actually working professionally on it, it wasn't until about 13 years ago that I started to do shows on vibes, and they weren't very good because I didn't really have any technique and couldn't really play. But I said, well, I got to start somewhere. So there's a little hole in the wall in New Orleans that I can play on Mondays, and you know, hopefully no one will notice, and I can play this and be mediocre for the next few years before hopefully it gets to going somewhere. So I think for me it was sort of yes and no. I mean, I did start with music very early, but the vibraphones themselves I really got serious about a lot later.
I also started with violin when I was 6. But I come from a really small town, relatively small, 8,500 people, which is in Alaska, which is the 5th largest in the state, at 8,500. I graduated in a class of 98, which is like 3 classes here. So I really had to make my own kind of choices. I really had to decide I want to play some music and go outside, if you will. I had a really good violin teacher. There was a couple excellent music teachers in my school, which you have here. Good job. Good job. And so those were really influential to me growing up, trying to be a musician. I actually also went to the Camp Interlochen over in Michigan, and that was a really big eye-opener for me when I was 16, coming from a really small pool of people, going where, I can play the drums, and then going to Interlochen going, can't play the drums. Cannot play the drums quite yet. So that was a really eye-opener. So just having these outreach things, people coming into my small town was amazing. So I'm glad this Wilbanzi Valley was able to bring us in. So.
I was very fortunate. My mom played piano, and she started my sister and I. I was 3, and my sister was 4, and I was actually learning how to read, and she actually taught us how to read the grand staff. She had one of these little doohickeys that, you know, a note would go up and down, and she'd go, what note is that? You know, it's like, oh, C, you know. And then I took lessons from her for a while, and I got to sneak in on my sister's teacher for a few lessons. I started formal classical lessons at 7, and then 5th grade, or 6th grade, started band out in Washington State, and learned flute, played saxophone, and dabbled on bassoon for a couple weeks in 8th grade. That was not good. It was so, you know, you can imagine, I'm not tall anyways, and then to be in junior high, and the reeds were really expensive, so that was a whole other, you know. And then dabbled with flugelhorn for a minute, and then my senior year picked up drums and went to college, and you know, was singing in choirs and stuff the whole time too. So I was very, very fortunate.
The concert band, right before, I read them some of the questions I was going to ask you guys, and they said, why don't you ask them, where is the coolest place you each have performed? And other than Wilbanzi Valley. So if you could tell us, where is the coolest venue that you've ever played in? Or maybe the greatest, you know, group that you played with, whatever.
The coolest thing for me was actually probably the college where I went to school in beautiful Ellensburg, Washington, Central Washington University, CW. Oh, somebody from Ellensburg. Hey! Yeah, go Cats. Anyways, we joke about it, the CWU, Country Western University. We play both kinds of music, country and Western. Yeah. So, but we were very fortunate. I was 19 years old and guest artist came in, Mr. Dizzy Gillespie. And he's doing a lecture in history of jazz class, and it's like a room like maybe about 2/3 the size. And it's packed wall to wall people. And, you know, he's talking about, you know, Charlie Parker and Bud Powell and all these guys. And then goes, well, I guess we should play something. Says, maybe we'll play a blues. Where's that piano player? You know, because I was playing in the band and got to play a duet on blues with Dizzy Gillespie. So that was probably the coolest thing for me.
Yeah, I think for me, there's been some good experiences. I think I'll just two that come to mind. One was there's a wonderful pianist that I work with by the name of Marcus Roberts, and there was a record that he made in the mid-90s called Portraits in Blue, where he did his own take on George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. And what that means is he didn't play it exactly like the written score. He changed some things up, he would improvise cadences, or he would reinterpret things in different ways. And so it was sometime after that that the great conductor, Seiji Ozawa, who we probably had worked with, recommended to him, like, you should check out Gershwin's Concerto in F. And he was a little hesitant at first, but finally he decided, all right, I think I'm going to do it. And it was something that we really had worked really hard on, just trying to get everything together, because it's a classical piece, but it involves a rhythm section, piano, bass, and drums. So we're trying to figure out how to merge this with orchestra. And so we went through the score and figured out, we can play here, well, let's leave that out, and let's not play there, let's play here and there. And so we finally got a chance to premiere it with the New Japan Philharmonic in Japan. And that was just really great. It was just a fun performance to be a part of, just to premiere a piece like that, just to play with orchestra and try to play like jazz, try to swing and groove with orchestra, and it all worked out.
Well, for me it's very simple to understand all of this, what you have, these great teachers and this great program, I never had. So the performance, which I never forget, is my first time on stage with Lionel Hampton, and I had tears in my eyes. And for me, not having this background and that support, being able to end up playing with one of the American legends, I will never forget that.
You guys were all serious. Mine probably happened in 8th grade, and it was actually at the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival. I somehow had won the vibraphone division, and I didn't really know anything about improvisation. I had written out a jazz improvised solo, and it just happened to be better than everyone else's. I think there were 3 of us. Cool, I got it though. Anyway, so I found out, went on stage, and I didn't really know what to expect. And so there was an older guy that was from Sitka, and our little middle school band had come down there, and we competed in the festival. But he just said, hey, if you don't know how to improvise, just play a really fast chromatic scale up and down. I knew how to do that. And so I got up on stage. I had no idea how many people were in the audience. There was probably well over 12,000 people there. I was about this high. So I was sitting on the vibes, and I'm sitting and waiting. We're playing C Jam Blues in B flat, and we're playing. It's a musician show. C Jam Blues, and I knew the melody, cool, played it, and then all of a sudden it came time to my solo. And I was like, da, 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 da. I just like started playing really fast. And I stopped at some point, and even though it was probably fairly terrible, the whole place erupted because I was like really tiny. And that feeling of performing for people and entertaining really stuck with me, and it was, I can still remember it, obviously. That's it.
If I could ask you,
I can play a traditional if you want.
that would be great. If we could ask you just one more question here for each of you. You've got to work with so many great students, budding musicians, but also they have so many other interests, and many of them obviously aren't going to go into music as a career. They're just going to continue on and do so many different wonderful things. What advice would you give to them, whether musical advice or just in terms of life in general? If you can just sort of say something to the kids that you work with. You want to start?
I think the most important thing is whatever you decide to do, commit to it. You know what I mean? Just make sure you're going in and go, I'm going to do this. Don't let people dissuade you from what it is you want to accomplish. Focus on those dreams and realize you're going to have to make those sacrifices to get to where you want to go, but stick with it and you'll get there.
I was just reminded of my father, pianist Alice Marsalis, and sometimes he gets asked that question, what advice do you have to young musicians? And he'll answer, become a plumber. Right. But actually, I think for me, if I had any advice, honestly, the one thing I would say is believe. And that's kind of it, because it's easy to get caught up in wanting to do music for who knows what reason, but maybe you don't even believe it. Maybe it's just, who knows what the intentions are, but I think it's first and foremost is to believe in whatever it is that you're doing, and I'm not referring to, if there's a gig that's paying, you have to take that to pay bills. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about just the whole general sense of believing in playing music, no matter what it is. And I think that sometimes that can get either lost or taken for granted or forgotten, but it's very important to believe in whatever it is that you're doing.
On the same note, let me answer the question with a native saying from this country, which really touched me very deeply. It says that the roadmap of your life is engraved in your heart. So the question was for me to find out, what is your heart, what is your heart's desire? Very simple. If you think of something and you're like, that would be so cool if I could do that. That's your heart talking to you. And then usually mind comes in and say, oh no, you cannot do this and you gotta do this. But your heart's desire is an energy which elevates you. So, and I've been pretty much following this all my life, and that saying really nails it.
Man, you guys were all serious. Just kidding. So I agree with all three of those guys. I've met a lot of really, really great musicians that aren't professional musicians, but they are professional in the way they perform. So what Jason was talking about, believe. If you want to play music, play music. If you want to make a career out of music, make a career out of music. I know a lot of people that should play for fun, and they're very happy people. I know a lot of people that work as musicians. Some of them are unhappy people. Right? So if you're in a group, I was telling another group, in Seattle, there's Boeing jazz bands and concert bands, Microsoft musical theater groups. There's so many opportunities out there that you can continue to perform and work on your craft. And so once you graduate high school and get done with the band, that's no way. Keep it going and play and hopefully you guys can all play for the rest of your life.
And Christian, Jason, Reuel, we look forward to hearing the rest of the program. One more time for the Native Jazz Quartet.